Okay. So tonight our talk is actually going to be about the role of mentoring in creative industries. But before I actually kind of get going, I wanted to kind of introduce them properly because I just kind of mentioned their names. Shahnaz is an award-winning senior designer and creative at Livity. And mentors on the Livity Digify program, training young Black and minority ethnic creatives to enter the creative industry. She's also a mentee in last year's Cannes Lions Seed Beat program. And she's also founder of Knit Aid, a movement that brings refugee communities together through knitting. If you give her a round of applause, that was amazing. There we go. And we've got Rebecca Rhodes, is an award-winning creative director with over 20 years experience at some of London's top agencies. She's also co-founder of SuperHuman, a marketing agency that helps brands better engage with women. And she's a creative trainer, training both a selection of communication agencies and global brands such as MTV and Sony Music. Give her a round of applause. And then we have Zoe Clapp. She's responsible for the creative, marketing and communications department at Britain's largest multi-channel broadcaster, UKTV. She's also a non-executive director of ThinkBox, a member of WACL, and she's taught and mentored at Cannes Lions and Creative Equals. And oddly enough, we've discovered that we went to the same university, did the same course, had the same tutors. So a very small world. So I wanted to kind of get started with my first question. And are you guys ready? Okay. So the first question is, how long have you been a mentor, and why did you think you could mentor someone else? Yes, please. Yeah.
So I think I've been a mentor for around 7 years now, and I started out mentoring people in my organisation, and then actually I love mentoring. I really, really love it. It's one of the most rewarding things that I can do in my job. And so I always seek out opportunities to mentor other people in other ways as well. And especially, I suppose, I know we're not talking about International Women's Day, but I feel especially passionate about mentoring women. And any group that feels underrepresented, I suppose, because there are so many people with lots and lots of confidence, and then there are so many people who feel slightly trapped by a lack of confidence and not knowing where to find answers to questions. And a lack of confidence never usually corresponds to a lack of ability. And so being able to unlock that is a really, really helpful thing. And also to show people how they can help other people is a helpful thing as well. So about 7 years now, and that's why.
Okay, brilliant. Would you like to answer as well, Rebecca?
Yes, why not? So I think hindsight's a wonderful thing. So with me, I think it got to a stage where I felt I had something that I could actually offer and felt confident enough to be able to impart some of that knowledge. And it's a really gratifying thing to do, is to be able to talk about, save somebody from necessarily going through some of the, kind of mess ups, or to avoid doing things that you maybe wouldn't have done if you had a choice. So I've particularly enjoyed that about mentoring, is being able to guide people with the knowledge that you've got after going through, quite a long and sometimes quite a brutal journey at the beginning. So it's sort of come towards, not the end of my career by any means, but, a good 10 years in, I suddenly felt myself in that situation. Yeah.
Okay. And Shahnaz, do you want to answer?
So I would probably consider myself more of an unofficial mentor, because, so at Livity, I don't know if anyone knows what we do, but basically a lot of the work we do benefits young people in some way. So one of the key ways we do that is having young people in our office all the time. So we have creatives in residence and entrepreneurs in residence that essentially share our desk space. And that's a bit of a mutual benefit thing, because obviously as a creative and a designer, it's really good to be around the people in who we're speaking to and we're serving. But in turn, if there's anyone who needs some advice that I can help with, then they might just sort of reach out and say, oh, hey, how do I do that in Photoshop? Or do you have a contact for this? And so I don't actually have experience in in sitting opposite someone and writing goals and then seeing them again 2 weeks later and doing it very officially. It's very much an organic, natural way, and I really like that. But I also, like Louise mentioned, I was on the See It Be It program, which is the opposite. It was a very structured program, and I was a mentee. And there's a lot of benefits to that as well.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you about being a mentee. Like, how did that benefit you? Kind of, having someone else kind of helping you out.
How can I say this without sounding really extreme? It basically changed my life. See It Be It changed my life, actually, just because I'd got to. I know why it's there as well. So again, as Louise mentioned, it's for senior creative women. So it comes at a time where you've been in the industry for a fair amount of time, and you know what you're good at, and back to what you were saying as well, like you're really good. You can be really good at your job, but confidence doesn't peak in the same way that your talent does. In fact, it probably goes like this or down, because the more senior you get, you think, well, why can't I be confident and like portray what I have to say in front of people? Anyway, so I have had a fear of speaking in public and just confidence issues in general. But I think going to See It Be It made me realise that, and coming across other women who have actually made it to the top, but are still quietly spoken, and they're shy and they're feminine in the way that they're leading people, and that's okay. And then being able to see that people are doing that meant that I think that I can be that too in the future, and that was really important to me. It's kind of, you get to a stage in your career, sorry, I'm rambling now, but I guess you get to a stage in your career when you're like 30s and you think, as a woman, you could potentially just leave the industry and go and have your children or go and do whatever because you don't see other women in leadership positions. But being mentored by women who are in senior leadership positions is so important to other women in order to stay in the industry.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask Zoe here quickly. So, do you get to choose your mentee at all? Do you get to choose? Yeah.
So I have never chosen a mentee. Actually, I've always been asked, and there's a couple of different ways that's happened. Usually, I'm just coupled up with someone else, and the way that I then set that up is to have an initial sort of, I guess you would say, a chemistry meeting with someone, as in terms of, are we going to work well together? Do you think you can learn something from me? Am I going to be rewarded by meeting you? But actually, how these things can often be set up is just go for that informal advice. Just go, hey, can I just ask a question? And then if both of you feel like that was a productive experience, then you could say, I guess take it to the next level and say, actually, maybe we could make this a structured thing, and maybe we can, meet on a regular basis for a period of time. For me, I always think it's good to set out the expectation of what the relationship is going to be, like how long you're going to spend together, like over what period of time, what the expectation is, so that you're really clear going into it. And also about confidentiality. There's a real big difference between being a mentor and being a sponsor. And being a mentor is often just going, can I just tell you all the stuff that's in my head? And that's a really different thing from, can you actively sponsor me and help me get to the next level? So I guess, it depends what people want. But I've never actually gone out and selected someone. I've been lucky to be selected by lots of interesting, amazing women. So.
And Rebecca, have you ever, people come to you and go, hey, I want you to mentor me. Do you ever have that?
It's happened a couple of times, but I'm exactly the same situation. I've never actually gone out and found mentees as such. There's been a couple that have wanted to be mentored, but they've usually got something that they particularly want to talk about. And often it's lifestyle stuff. That's the really interesting stuff. You sit down thinking, right, what are they going to ask me about my career, and what have I got that I can tell them? And often I've often found it is about lifestyle. How do I manage my job with my family? And actually now I'm planning a family, and sometimes quite young people saying, I'm planning a family in 10 years' time. Can you tell me how I can manage a job and my career with that? And that comes up quite a lot. And that was a surprise to me. I always expected it to be the more functional stuff and the training and the how do I get to the top. But it's changed, definitely.
Okay, all right. And okay, so just a quick one. I wanted to kind of find out what's the ultimate goal for, when you meet someone? Like, do you kind of think, right, I want to make sure that this person gets to the top, or you just want to help them a little bit, or what's your ultimate goal when you kind of in the first conversation that you have, you're thinking, right, I like you. Now, how can I help you? Like, what's the ultimate goal for them?
I think the first meeting that you ever have with someone, if they've indicated that they would like to be mentored by you, is to find out exactly what they want. Because this is the whole point of being a mentor, is to unlock in them the thing that they are struggling with, and to find out what is their goal. So as a mentor, you're trying to be a useful sounding board, and quite often people know the answers for all of their problems within themselves. It's about asking the questions to get out of them what they want. So the first meeting is always about really what do you want? And sometimes, a bit like a psychologist, the presenting problem is not really, it's the thing that they say right at the very end when they go, oh, actually, and there was also this thing that I wanted to chat about. And sometimes you go, that's the thing that is actually really important to you. And so it's just trying to tease out exactly what it is that they want without projecting your own ideas upon them.
Rebecca, just a quick one. So did you, why do you think mentoring is good for the creative industry? What's your thoughts?
It's good for any industry, obviously.
Yeah.
But for the creative industry, I think there's, you've got confidence is key, and actually I've noticed we've all talked about that today. To think of an idea, to be able to present it is another thing, and that's often a real blockage for a lot of people, both men and women actually. And mentoring, having time with somebody who has gone through that process, who's been there, done it, who's fucked up maybe, is really important. So that's why I think it's particularly key. I mean, I've definitely spent a lot of time mentoring people, and a lot of it's been about how do I speak up? How do I really do my idea justice? And sometimes with women, it's how do I do it justice in a room full of guys? And that's been very interesting. And often it's about trying to help people with their confidence, but also to get across, I think, that you can be as powerful with a quiet voice as you can be with the loudest, and that's okay. So, yeah, that's what I think about that.
Okay. Same question over to. Could you repeat? Yeah, Shahnaz. The question was, why is mentoring good for the creative industry? We can come back to you if you like.
Well, I can't sort of choose all the reasons why. I think I think there's just so much to sort of bestow. I mean, there's just so much.
All right, don't worry. It's fine. It's fine, maybe. Okay, so have you... Actually, this is kind of... I've put this question in and I thought, oh no, maybe I shouldn't. It was... you've kind of got someone that you mentor and you think, you know what, maybe I'm not right for this person. Have you ever fired a mentee? Have you ever moved them on then? Maybe fire is not the right word, but have you moved them on to someone else?
I think in a chemistry meeting, you can kind of figure out if you're going to fit together and if you're going to work well together. So I've never fired someone, actually. But you asked about why mentoring is good for the creative industry. Yeah. And actually on that, I think the creative industry should be full of... Actually, I look at this room and there are so many... the energy is palpable in this room. There are so many interesting, chatty people. When you were asked to introduce yourselves to each other, you didn't just kind of politely shake each other's hands. There was a sea of conversation, and there's so much energy and warmth. And yet the creative industry is not representative of all the people in this room, In London, 12% of creative directors are men. And yet, we have a diverse population that we're trying to represent. And that's why mentoring is really, really important, because we need to give a path and a voice to people who don't necessarily see themselves being at the top of the organisation. And so I think that's why it's really important.
Okay, all right, brilliant. Thank you. That was brilliant. Okay, and what's your advice to anyone who'd like to be a mentor, Rebecca?
Just be a very good listener for a start, which is exactly what you were saying earlier, and enjoy it, because it's a two-way process. You can learn as much from your mentee as being a mentor itself, and actually, it sounds really selfish, but actually you do learn an awful lot, and it's a real pleasure to be able to give. I think it's really it's life affirming in a way, because going back to your question about have you ever sacked anybody, I definitely haven't. It's quite an interesting question. Haven't, but what I've thought of is I know people that could really help this person, and I think that's a great thing. Is to suddenly sit there and go, right, I actually know quite a few people that could really help you with your particular question, and I'm going to hand people over, and it's a really great feeling. So selfishly, it's as good an experience for you as it is hopefully for your mentee.
Okay. Same question. Yeah. Have you got an answer on that?
I think, if you want to be a mentor, I think it should work around your life. So if you like structure and you like to set goals, then it should be like that. But I think if you just want to have a one-off meeting with someone, that's also okay. And actually, those thinking of mentoring as a 5-minute conversation with someone is just as useful to both mentor and mentee than it being a structured thing that we do. So making it work around your life.
Okay, cool. And then I've actually got one more question. Sorry, there's supposed to be little jokes in between, but I'm not very good at that, I'm afraid. Sorry. It's also like make you kind of giggle. So I just want to ask one quick question before I kind of put it out to the audience. What's the best advice you've been given or received as a mentor, or for going back to before at the start of your career, like? Someone might have said something to you and you thought, what, that really helped. Like, what's been the best advice you've been given? Or you don't want to share?
I can start?
Yeah,
I could start with maybe like what I wish I'd been given.
Yes.
Which is to be myself. And I know that sounds quite cheesy, but I guess like when you're in a room of people that don't look like you, maybe, whether that's especially as a designer or a creative, you're often one or few women, or definitely for me, the only woman of colour in a room, and you tend to try to fit in with the norm, and if something comes up that you think, actually, that wouldn't really work with that audience, or that's actually quite offensive, you wouldn't say it. And I spent a long time of my career just not speaking up, and trying to fit in a bit. So I wish somebody told me when I graduated, and I told someone who I kind of unofficially mentor here, Janae. I've been sort of helping her with a little brief, and her approach to that, which is to essentially come at it from her own unique lived experience, and actually answering that brief from that experience will make it so much more authentic, and so in turn it will create even better work. And obviously that's the solution to a more diverse industry, is that we will essentially create better work when there are more people in the room from different backgrounds. So I wish someone had told me that I could have created better work by being myself.
Okay, that's brilliant, actually. Would you like to answer that?
I could think of so many different things. One that particularly sticks out in my mind as you were talking then was just something that an old boss told me many years ago when I was being polite and saying, I'm very frustrated because I'm better than the job that I'm doing. And he said, well, it's the squeaky wheel that gets oiled. And this is I'll come back to that so many times. It's like quite often in your head really what you should be doing. But if you don't ask for it, no one else will know. So actually the best people to work with are the people who they just say what's on their mind. They say what they need. They say what they want to be able to do a brilliant job, because you can't expect everyone else to know what it is that you need. So to me, that's a good piece of advice.
Thanks. Rebecca, did you want to answer that?
Probably advice that I'd like to have been given as much as anything is that, your career doesn't necessarily go like that, or if you're really unfortunate like that, it's more like this. And that ultimately, you will bugger up at some point, and it's not the end of the world. And it doesn't mean your career is over. In fact, it can be a start, and it can send you off in a completely new direction. And that's really exciting. Instead of, starting out living in kind of fear or terrified that you maybe will make a mess, or that you're making decisions that are slightly safer, actually kind of go for it, because it's a long old journey if you're lucky, and there's room, as I say, to move around and take different directions. That would have been very useful, and it would have made life more comfortable. And I might be living in Amsterdam now.
Okay, so I'm going to throw some questions out to the if anyone's asked questions to our panel, and don't be shy. Just brilliant. There's someone straight away. Cool. Did you hear that question? What's the most challenging thing? Yeah.
You know what? So obviously, everything we talk about, I always conduct there's always confidentiality around, the conversations that we have. But I suppose in general, the most challenging issues will be when they can't quite figure out what it is that they want to do, and it's just a general restlessness. I think that's always really challenging when you can't quite get to the nub of what they really want. I think that is the most difficult thing. And actually, as a mentor, that is your challenge, to really figure out what it is that they're trying to achieve, because it might come up as lots of different things, and just a general sense of frustration or restlessness or wanting to get somewhere, but they're not quite sure where. And that, I think, to me, is the biggest challenge. Does that help?
Rebecca, did you want to answer that as well?
I think actually it's when you figure out that you can't actually necessarily do anything for them, and that they really need to move and quite quickly, and it's not necessarily your place to say run. But I've had that a couple of times where you get a kind of a gut feeling for them, and then you start to say, right, okay, well, as my role as a mentor, exactly how involved do I get? So yeah, I've
definitely mentored people that the best thing they should do is change their job. And and I think that's absolutely fine as advice to give, which is actually you're in the wrong place, you're in the wrong industry. You know what? Let's work out the next steps. And I think that's fine. That's like a good gift to give someone, is to say, look, that's your path.
I think that's very
I think for me, it's when someone comes to you and you think that you have something to give, and then it turns out that maybe they don't even like the industry or what the job that you're doing, and you're like, oh, so then you have to open out to even wider mentoring, which is just human to human, what do you want to do with your life? And actually those conversations can be more rewarding and actually easier. And then it's like when you're doing a mentoring session and it's about how to be more creative or how to be this, that, the other, you have sort of boundaries. But when you open that up and it's just let's just loosen up, what is it that you really want? I feel like it can be more beneficial sometimes to do that.
Okay. Brilliant. And does anyone else have a question? I thought that was a really good answer. Can actually anyone hear me? Sorry, I'm talking really low. Okay, brilliant, perfect.
What's the best way to go about finding the right mentor?
Does anyone want to answer that?
So I think you asked, how do you find a great mentor for you, right? So I think you can do a couple of really simple things. One is try and find someone who inspires you, or who you think might have, some of the knowledge that you're trying to garner, and work out your 1 degree of separation from them, so that you'll always know someone, related to someone that you want to speak to. And then it is just about saying, can I meet with you? Can I chat with you? Or asking them a really specific question. Some people are really put off by, especially if they're really busy, put off by, hey, can we have coffee? Because they're just like, what does this mean? So if you can just say, I've got this problem, I'd like 5 minutes of your time to talk about that, and then you have a conversation. And I think that's a good way of starting out.
Rebecca, did you want to answer that?
Just ambush them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was going to say about specificity is just be like, I have this exact problem. Can I have 5 minutes? is much better. And also, again, not expecting a huge long relationship with them. And if it's someone that you really admire and is actually quite famous or whatever, like a bit of twittering, a bit of direct messaging, and then that could also be enough. Just a digital bit mentoring as well.
Actually, that's one question I wanted to ask was, how long do you have mentor someone for normally, roughly? You know, does it vary? I mean, do you still have the same people, or?
It depends.
Yeah.
You know, some people it's ongoing, and some people it's for a particular, amount of time. It depends on the person as well.
Okay, all right. Does anyone else have any more questions?
As a mentor, do you feel that you always have the answer?
Yes.
Or do you have to sort of, they give you a question like, going to go and do a little bit of research, like how much of it is what you know or what you go out of your way to find out?
Rebecca? Yeah, Rebecca, do you want to answer that?
I always have the answer, always. I think it depends. I mean, often you've got this relationship because they want to mine your own experience. So most of the time I found that I can give an opinion. Occasionally there'll be a question that is a factual or a functional kind of question, then you can go away and find out information. But as a whole, most of the time it's kind of it's talk around experience, which you can only offer your advice and your own view on the question. So most of the time it's okay. Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on whether it's what kind of mentoring relationship you've got. If it is a slightly more skills-based situation, then yeah, you might need to be on your toes, and you might need to go away and find out some information.
Okay, all right. Did you want to answer as well?
It's probably more from experience of being the mentee, which is appreciating just being linked up with the right person who does know, or also just saying, I don't know, then I can just switch that one off and I'll go and find someone else to answer that question.
Okay. All right, cool. Does anyone else?
Oh, brilliant. I just wondered about, do you ever find yourself, or you're mentoring somebody, actually them, or finding yourself trying to help them get a job, or or them asking you to get them a job? And is there a boundary that you set around whether or not that person becomes what you might call a sponsor?
So for me, I have definitely moved from a relationship with someone where it's mentoring, and actually, for me, mentoring is never about providing answers. Or that's a last resort. It's about asking questions, and after a period of time, I might move into more of a sponsor role where I go, God, you're just brilliant. I'm a massive fan of you. You're going to do well. I want to be on your bus, And then I might just go, actually, yeah, let's, let me see how I can help you. But usually, so in my experience, it's moved in that sort of system. I'm invested in someone. I've spent a period of time with them, and then I will want to sponsor them, and that's a sort of natural occurrence.
Rebecca, do you want to answer that as well? Or not? Are you good?
Yeah, no, I mean, if I've spent some time with somebody and I like them and I think they're good, then I'll do everything humanly possible to help them in that direction, without a doubt. I mean, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's mentoring for me is giving back as well. And if I can help them, and if someone's looking for a job and I think they're good, and I know people that might be looking, then I don't think that's crossing over any sort of boundaries by any means.
Okay, all right, cool. I was going to throw it back out there, unless you want to answer. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions at all? Okay. Oh, brilliant.
Did it happen for some of them to be ungrateful?
Okay. Sorry. Can you repeat the question? Right. I actually didn't catch that.
Did you ever find your mentees are ungrateful?
All right. Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much. Did you find any of your mentees to be ungrateful?
Thankfully not. No.
Okay, no?
Not that I know of. Possibly.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, I mean, obviously, like I touched on before, if you work with young people, then and from different backgrounds, it's not necessarily something that I would have ever taken personally. It's a bit of a life skill thing. in terms of being like, oh, thank you, you've changed my forgive it a little bit, and it's not about your ego as well, in terms of being like, oh, thank you, you've changed my life. And sometimes someone's just going to come and ask you for like 2 hours of your time and just walk away, and then that's it. And you just have to be like, okay, well, I've had a bit of a mark on their life in some way, and that's all you get for it.
Okay. Well, that's brilliant. Are we? Sorry. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, apparently I'm running out of time. Thank you very much to our panel. They've been amazing. Do you want to give them a round of applause?